What is the worst thing you've ever seen or heard in a game of truth or dare? When I was 15, a girl I was trying to date invited my friend and me over to a house where she was babysitting. When we arrived, she was there with 4 of her girlfriends, including her one extremely slutty and rumored stew-wielding friend. After drinking everything in the house she thought the parents wouldn't miss, we played truth or dare. Eventually, the girl I liked dared me to go have sex in the master bedroom with the slut. I passed and took truth, but my friend took the dare and went off with her. They came back out about 5 minutes later, and no one believed they had done anything. 9 months after that, everybody believed them. One of the popular girls in my high school admitted to regularly pooping in her hand. She took truth and was asked to tell an embarrassing secret or something like that. She said that she was always embarrassed whenever there was a splashing sound in the toilet when she went to poop. So she'd always poop in her hand and then slide it quietly into the water. She went from being a popular girl to being the hand poop girl pretty quick. I watched my friend take a shit in the park, then we threw rocks at it. I miss being a teenager. Kiss the most beautiful girl in the room. Proceed to not kiss your girlfriend. Perks of being a wallflower. My friends and I loved this game in high school. One day I came up with the best dare. You had to be blindfolded and someone would kiss you and you'd have to guess who it was. Well, eventually everyone just wanted to play that game, so we did for a few rounds. There were like 8 or 9 of us, so one person would be blindfolded and everyone would vote on who had to kiss them. It was always a good mix of genders. Guy guy, guy girl, girl girl. Welp. It got boring eventually because everyone was just doing a light peck on the lips, so we invented round 2. Round 2, you had to kiss them for 3 seconds and actually move your lips a little bit, like a real kiss. Round 3, you had to make out with them for 5-7 seconds. Round 4, you had to use your hands and touch their face and shoulders. On particularly wild nights we would get to round 5, where you would have to actually straddle the person and make out furiously with them for 10 seconds. It was a great game though, and to be honest it taught me how to make out properly because at the end we rated everyone's kissing. When asked to present a deep secret about themselves, one of the really hot girls, this was high school, straight up admitted to using whipped cream to get her cat, air and their tongues like sandpaper, to lick her. The awkwardness escalated exponentially like a nuke in the room, seeping into the very core of every living being present. I got dared to use a zipline that nobody had likely touched in decades, so we climbed up a mountain while wasted in the middle of the night, found that my friend was not bullshitting and that it actually did exist, used our zip on it and sailed over a 1500-foot drop, and then the thought occurred to me that I had no way of getting back. And I had not even brought a flashlight with me, and had absolutely no knowledge of part of the mountain I was on, so I basically stood in place for 7 hours or so. I don't know if that was the worst, but it was definitely the most stupid, especially considering that the whole point of the game was to get with some girls who were no longer in a partying mood after I disappeared into the night. At age 18, while at a friend's house digging around looking for a lighter, he finds an adult toy in his single dad's room. It was one of those hot pink, sparkly dildos with the rabbit thing on it, something that didn't really seem like a guy toy, and it was in the spare nightstand, so we assumed maybe an old girlfriend's or something. Fast forward a few weeks later, his dad is out of town. There are a few of us over playing truth or dare and I dare him to do something to his dad's dildo. At first his face turned 10 shades of red, embarrassed in front of everyone else, but then he manned up, grabbed it with a Ziploc bag worn like a glove, then rubbed some cut open habanero peppers all over it. This was a Friday night and his dad was supposed to be back Saturday. Saturday night rolls around and he, our other friend, and myself are all at his house, quietly, as the one sneaking in, and I had been drinking. This was roughly 8-ish. As the other friend and I stood in the driveway, we hear the most god-awful, blood-curdling scream, the type of scream that sounds like someone being murdered. We dash in just in time to meet our friend in the hallway as he flies into his dad's room. His mom, dad's ex-wife, is in the floor but naked, curled up in a ball screaming her head off. Apparently his mom and dad had been screwing around behind the family's back. A hospital trip followed, and after spending the night in the ER, not knowing WTF happened, they ended up coming out in the open, getting back together, and then remarried. That was 12 years ago and they are still together. For their wedding present I gave them a jar of habaneros that they still don't understand to this day. One dare was to bake cookies whilst nude, but then we were out of sugar, so a follow-up dare required a second person going to the neighbor's door in underwear to ask for a cup of sugar. It worked and the cookies were delicious. Grad student neighbors didn't even bat an eye. Let me tell you how my old friend Dip got his name. Dip was the one Asian kid in our loosely associated group of metalheads and excitable fools that routinely hung out in this stretch of woodland by our houses. We'd heard rumors that Dip had a strange penis. We set up a game of Dare or F off where we would goad Dip, then called Cliff, into showing us this legendary thing of his through alcohol and peer pressure. It was totally not gay. In fact, the plan was driven forward by this one girl in our group who had a thing for Cliff. She was a kinda petite little punky chick, I'll call her Claire, not her real name, who was all set to sample some Eastern delights. For the rest of us it was an anthropological exercise. It was for science. So we got liquored up at the mouth of this little dry cave we used as a general stash and a private area for romantic times. 2 bottles of vodka were had between 17s, including Dip and Claire. The night was lit by this gigantic torch one guy borrowed from this dad. It was a warm night. We would see this thing in all its terrible glory. The stage was set. We spun the bottle. It landed on me. "Show us your dick," said one of the girls. As planned, I had nothing to hide, turned away, took it out of my jeans sack and all, spun around. Everyone went, "Oh Jesus," and I put it away. Most natural thing in the world. Cliff looked uncomfortable, like maybe he didn't want to play anymore. Claire sat beside him and put her arm around his back. We spun the bottle. Sure enough, it landed on Cliff. "Show us your dick." "No way." "Show us your dick." "Don't be fags." etc. etc. We impressed upon him the binding nature of the dare situation. Nothing left the circle. Were we buds for life or what? Then Claire made her move. "You'll show me, won't you?" He was dumbstruck as she led him into the cave and told us to keep watch. Big dumb grin on his face. Fumble fumble fumble. Time went by. Oh Jesus. Oh Jesus. Oh Jesus. Cliff and Claire were straight up effing in the cave. This was unheard of. Then Claire let out this unnatural scream. We heard scuffling and pebbles scattering, and we turned the torch into the cave mouth. There was Cliff coming at us with a swinging hard-on and his jeans under his arm. It was the longest penis I've ever seen, or cared to see, outside of porn. Probably 9 inches in all with this fat head and thin shaft. The shaft was under an inch in diameter, the width of my thumb at the knuckle, and it was kinked like a hockey stick. To our horror, this nightmare womb plunger, this cervical spear, this satanic dipstick was half covered in blood. Cliff ran the F away, mind broken. Claire emerged and her friends took her home. We didn't know until the following Monday what had happened. Did she need an ambulance or what? What had the monster done? Cliff wouldn't come to the phone. It turns out that Dipstick's awful dong had somehow triggered her period early for that month by agitating the very depths of her womanhood with its crazy plunger head. She must have been kinda borderline at the time. Cliff instantly became Dipstick, later Dip. The story has a kinda happy ending. 2 girls took on the Dip challenge over the next year. Neither reported enjoying it, but Cliff was pleased with himself. Edit. Oh wow, you are all very kind. I expected this to be buried. Cliff, if you're out there reading this, I'm sorry I broke the circle of trust, and I hope you are still putting that thing to good use. I got really drunk in a game with some workmates and I had to get out my testicles and touch them against one of the other guy's testicles. Probably pretty tame compared to what else will be on this thread. I once gave a friend 2 dares in a row. I dared him to drink 6 cups of water. Then I dared him to not move from the couch for the rest of the game. A girl at a party I once went to got dared to sit on a small lava lamp. As in, sit on it if you get what I mean. Anyway, this thing was on, and hot. Poor girl sat for 2 seconds and jumped right back up. Turned out she gave herself burns on the inside of her lady parts. It wasn't really a dare, but a drunken friend said he'd show us how much of a man he was. In quick succession he chugged about 250 milliliters of Jack Daniels, snorted a line of salt and poured vinegar into one eye and squeezed a lemon in the other. Everybody laughed at him because he had to run to the bathroom crying to wash his eyes. When I was about 15 years old, my HS soccer team had a co-ed, girls guys team. Spaghetti dinner that turned into a co-ed sleepover. Maybe about 6 guys and 5 girls. We ended up taking a bottle of really cheap Mr. Boston vodka from this kid's parents and all of us began drinking much faster than 15-year-olds should. I was begging to feel pretty nauseous but was determined to stay in the game of truth or dare that we had started. I was then dared to kiss the bare cheek of one of the more crude chicks on the girls team. As I pressed my lips to her cheek, she thought it would be hilarious to grab the back of my head and rip a right in my face. The heat and smell were too much for my stomach to bear, and as I pulled away I barfed all over her back and just a regular dare. My friends and I got one of our friends to drink month-old bong water. Looked like black sludge water that smelled terrible. Told him it would get him real high. More of a trick than a dare, I guess. He did it and hurled instantly. People puking black liquids out is pretty effed up to see. When I was 16 I played truth or dare whilst really drunk. Bad mistake. I got asked what the most humiliating thing I've ever done was. Well, drunk me thought telling people about the time I had a wank and managed to unload so hard I covered my own face was a good idea. Never lived it down. Warning. Sat. We were teens. High on hormones. I dared Mick to put his pet gerbils down his boxers. He did cause he had a crush on me. One of them died of fright. The pregnant female one. It still haunts me. If I could change one thing in my life, it would be that.